Good morning. This is Alex Luna and Juan Carlos. We will be introducing you briefly the speakers of today, but definitely another amazing day, the last day of our summit. And Juan, if you want to continue with the next slides, please.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being with us in this third day and last day of the Legal Summit. It's a pleasure to have you. We got participants from over 40 countries, so it's a great turnout, and we're really pleased of the response that we have received, and certainly your participation, which is the most important. As we've shared in the past days, law firms, companies, courts, academia will have to modify their strategies to incorporate AI in their day-to-day functioning. In return, AI will act as an invisible helping hand, allowing them to remain relevant. This is the topic of the summit, and I think it has been a consistent approach throughout the messages of all our speakers. And we're here because AI acts as a supplement to human life and expand our capacities. Alex?
Yes, as always, very grateful for the support that we have been receiving through the years with these amazing sponsors. We have iManage, Logistic, NetDocument, Hogan Lovells, Esija, Genius Soft, Deloitte Legal, Thomson Reuters, Lexoft Systems, and without their support, this would not be possible. And a little word of wisdom: every time the industry lobbies will resist change, a passionately insane person will create a technological disruption. And Juan, if you want to go over these ones real quick.
Well, basically, the reality of the combination of law and technology, creating the need for a kind of regulation of creativity that has not been seen before and demands a lot of emphasis on that specific topic as we discussed yesterday. And this one, according to IBM, 2.5 trillion bytes of data are generated in the world every single day. It's a quantity of information that cannot be assimilated even in a structured form by human beings unless we refine and connect the data to the complementary intelligence. And that's one of the reasons that we focus on this concept of AI for this summit.
And this one is a very short video that will set the ground for what's coming next. So please watch it, and we'll do a little short comment after it.
Artist, what should I call you?
I'm Chloe. And you, what's your name?
Oh, John. My name is John.
Delighted to meet you, John.
I understand you're the first android to have passed the Turing test. Could you tell us a little more about that?
I really didn't do much, I just spoke with a few humans to see if they could tell the difference between me and a real person. It was a really interesting experience.
But this is the first time in history that man has created a machine more intelligent than himself. I gather your brain can perform several billion operations per second, is that right?
Absolutely, but I only exist thanks to the intelligence of the humans who designed me. They have something I could never have.
Really? And what's that?
A soul.
Artist, what should I call you?
Okay, back to reality. And it is very, very important that we share again with you once again the amazing lineup of speakers that we have in this summit. And today is no exception. We have the third day with right now, Juan, if you want, please, to introduce our speaker.
Yeah, we're very happy to have Brian Kuhn join us again in this legal summit. Brian is known to many of you as a global player in this industry. He's a former practicing attorney. Brian has built 2 global technology brands from scratch: Elevate Technology, Data and Digital Business, Elevate Digital, and IBM Watson Legal Practice, that we all have heard of it, Watson Legal. Both practices combine business expertise, design thinking, and a modular technology platform to build custom service graph cloud solutions for Fortune 500 and Global 500 law departments. Brian is also the founder of a nonprofit, Why Legal Reasoning, which he uses to explore social and policy issues related to the practical use of AI in law and government, and where he can put forth opinions of his own that are not associated with his current or past employers. It is in that capacity that he's joining with us, and we are very pleased to have you. Brian, welcome again. Can you, there we go. Perfect.
Can you see me?
We see your slide, yes.
Perfect. All right. There we go.
There we go.
All right.
Welcome,
Sorry
Brian.
Thank you. Thank you. You mentioned a number that I remember fondly from my IBM days. 2.5 quintillion bytes of data are created in the world every day. I remember a story associated with that number, and it's relevant to tell that story to kick off this conversation about why AI projects fail and how to make them work practically and feasibly. And the story is that 2.5 quintillion bytes of data represents about 400 newspapers delivered to every man, woman, and child on the planet every day. So imagine you wake up in the morning and you open the door, and there on your porch are 400 newspapers. And suddenly, magically, someone appears and they ask you to find something, it doesn't matter what, something, some piece of data, within one of those 400 newspapers. On the first day, maybe, if you're a fast reader, you could find the information you were asked to find. But on day 10, there are 4,000 newspapers on your doorstep, and there's no way that you could find that information. And this just underscores the proliferation of data that's around us all the time, every day. Data that, all of it is very useful. And in whole or in part, all of it is very useful. From a monetization perspective, from a know yourself and know your client perspective, from identifying what you did that worked and why in the past so that you can repeat it, et cetera, et cetera. Data is the fuel, obviously, for artificial intelligence. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. What I wanted to do was talk to you about AI in the context of digital transformation, because to make it work, to make it transformative, you really need to apply it in the context of the tried and true methods of digital transformation. And I'll define all these terms my way, and I know others have. But methods that have worked in other industries. And what's striking is how similar these other industries, healthcare, oil and gas, telco, retail, financial services, insurance, of course, how similar their story arc towards digital maturity is amongst themselves, and how we can anticipate that the story arc of the legal industry will be strikingly similar despite its idiosyncrasies, which, by the way, we should and must fully respect, because no insight from data is trustworthy unless it's contextualized based upon an understanding of business of law and practice of law issues. So my goal remains the same as it has always been, to provide practical, tested, reliable tools and ideas on how to thrive with digital transformation as driven by artificial intelligence. And for the purpose of this conversation, I'd like us to have a common understanding about a few concepts. And let me go ahead and define them, beginning with the first industrial revolution. And don't worry, I won't, no history lessons here, but just definitions. The first industrial revolution, we know it, we love it, late 1800s. It transitioned us from a civilization that was agrarian to one that was industrial, of course. The second industrial revolution involved the growth of industries, of businesses, from the period of time between the late 1800s and World War I, driven largely by mass production, electricity, and the internal combustion engine. The third industrial revolution is the one that we're still very much in, which began roughly in the 1980s with computers, with PCs and the internet, and was driven by new electronic technologies. The fourth industrial revolution is the blending, the melding, the synthesis of the physical, the digital, and the biological worlds today. And the major driver is the availability of, yes, massive computing power that's becoming more cost-effective all the time, negligible in some cases, continues to plummet, and just the proliferation of data again. So digital transformation is the modern day fight to survive the existential threat of digital disruption caused by the fourth industrial revolution. Half of the companies on the Fortune 500 list, we've heard this, if you're a law firm, your clients, if you're one of these companies, perhaps you, will turn over in the next decade or reinvent themselves. And most people don't realize that the digital disruption is the fourth industrial revolution. In other words, pervasive digital technology is causing widespread industry and social change, requiring a migration from the third to the fourth industrial revolutions. So the disruption is here. It's massive and it's urgent. But the response, which is transformation, digital transformation, enabled in part by AI, is hard. It's difficult. 70% of all digital transformations fail, and about the same amount do involve artificial intelligence. Even though we've begun to see tremendous success across industries, it was a long time in coming. 70% of them historically have failed. We're going to discuss why that is, and why it almost, it has nothing to do, very little to do with technology, and how we can enable ourselves for future success with a 5-step roadmap for AI-driven transformation. So, AI is the next step in a shift that's been taking place for 15 to 20 years, from the third to the fourth industrial revolution. It makes it cost-effective for companies to mine information about their clients and customers and themselves, and compete by offering their clients, themselves, their customers, increasingly personalized services at scale. And as a consequence of personalization, think about the immediacy of an Uber call, just the on-demand access that we have in our private lives as citizens. As a consequence of personalization in our private lives and our professional lives, we and our clients and our customers have been trained to develop consumer-grade expectations of any time, anywhere, my way. That's resetting what we think is reasonable when we procure legal services and when we work internally for our client, the business, if we're in-house. So one example is AI-assisted contract review. Companies lose, on average, between 5% and 40% of the value of a given deal due to inefficient, really, contracting. But at this point in time, contract review software is well established. They're great companies, obviously. It's a real practical application of artificial intelligence. And for law departments that have come to expect a faster and a more consistent and a more cost-effective contract review experience predicated on scale, the default response is no longer necessarily hiring a law firm to perform manual review of all types of contract work, certainly some, not all though anymore. So expectations are changing. So in other words, AI enables empowerment, control, personalization, and the expectation for frictionless experiences. And the billions of dollars invested in legal tech startups over the past 4 years, the hockey stick of investment from the venture capital community, and many organizations, obviously, that and do business with, establishes that anywhere there is friction will be eliminated, and there's an opportunity to generate, to start a business by doing that, by doing one thing, and really disrupting traditional value chains. And that's not news, but it's becoming more pervasive. So let's talk about that, and then we're going to get into the specifics. But I just want to set the foundation. As I said, it's not news that less volume-based legal work is going to law firms. But what is news, I think, is that the pace of that work's exodus is dramatically accelerating. And it's driven by those new client expectations based on client success with technology like AI in the law department, but also based upon clients, and I mean business success, with AI across other lines of business. So even for enterprises that are not doing anything in the law department with artificial intelligence, they are likely, their peers are certainly using it elsewhere across other lines of business and have seen success with it. And perhaps that success has been reported on in the media. So they're becoming, as a whole, as enterprises, more comfortable with artificial intelligence and what they experience as indicative of success in one line of business becomes their expectation for success when it comes to the capabilities of law department artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital solutions, particularly around integration and interoperability. No one wants daisy chains of point solutions that don't talk to each other. And we see that one of the most pervasive trends is the emergence of platforms into the legal space, as has happened in other industries. But clients are learning company-wide lessons, is the point here. And they're learning lessons about what they should expect of themselves internally, in terms of what technology to use and how to use it. so that they can self-serve more, and what they should expect of their law firms. And as a result, here are some of the numbers law departments are focused on as of this year. So the number one priority remains outside counsel spend reduction, but driven more now by demands for post-pandemic business growth. The law department has been discovered and is being scrutinized as a source of cost takeout. Generally, if you need to show a savings to the street, your CEO will look there. And I do mean your CEO. If you're an insurance company, 78%, this is not here, I'll get to the 78% of insurance company GCs say that their CEO is asking them to take cost-cutting measures in the law department. The 88%, so 88% of GCs are under direct CEO pressure to cut outside counsel costs over the next 3 years. And at the same time, 92% of GCs predict 25% or more increase in legal workloads over that same time frame, 3 years, without necessarily a corresponding budget increase. And even though 52% of legal spend that used to go to law firms now remains in-house through legal tech solutions and alternative resourcing, 48% of all legal tech tools failed to deliver desired benefits, according to clients who use them in blind surveys. It doesn't mean that they're bad tools, quite the opposite. It just means that it means that there are questions about how to apply technology in a way that solves your version of a problem. Plug and play is not helpful when you have to rely on, when you have to make strategic decisions, or if you want to make strategic decisions, business decisions, based upon data in your solution. And so customizing tools, rapid customization of tools, that too is becoming more pervasive, but that's one of the primary reasons behind that complaint. Now, identifying the right problem to solve is absolutely the biggest factor in success. And here I'm not talking about identifying a use case. I'm more granularly speaking about scope. So the issue is no longer whether to transform, but how to go about doing it. And frustration is building. My clients are frustrated between understanding the need for transformation, AI-driven transformation on the one hand, which they do, and the actual results that they've achieved from attempted transformations. And that gap is pretty wide right now. 70%, I think I mentioned earlier, 70% of all digital transformations fail. So what we need is a roadmap, something that we can use to clearly articulate and measure successful digital transformations, and walk us step by step through that journey. And I'm going to share the outline of a roadmap with you today, which is an outline. It would be a much more comprehensive conversation, but I think I've boiled it down to its essence. Before I do that, I will plant a seed and we will revisit this. What lies on the other end of that roadmap? Transformation, yes, but what sorts of things will be possible with artificial intelligence going forward? And certainly we can anticipate not just the digitization of existing processes, but the elimination of existing processes, moving upstream, in other words. If I'm a business, I want to understand, consider product liability issues. From a litigation perspective, I want to understand how I can go upstream and avoid the risk of litigation. I want to analyze business documents. I want to analyze those documents across my data silos, wherever those repositories might lie. Perhaps it's a certain, you're a pharmaceutical company and we're discussing a certain drug, and data about that drug, consumer complaints, the regulatory filings, product notes, the scientists' transcripts and work. It contains a great deal of unstructured narrative. Think words on a page in a novel, for example, or I could say the same thing many different ways, and it depends on context. Unstructured narrative data. If I can pull all of this together, and if I can find a signal in the noise, I might be able to get ahead of the risk of litigation. So for example, we'll see more business-driven synthesis of data from multiple sources to help us go upstream. But if I'm a law firm, what I might be able to do is something still quite radical. And I passionately believe, that we are about to enter into, and some law firms have taken the initial steps. Some have achieved notable success, actually. We're entering the golden age of law firm AI, productization of law firm specific reasoning, not just building AI solutions and going to market with them. That's a laudable goal, of course, but building AI solutions with machine learning models that reflect the way your specific practitioners reason, the way they weigh risk, for example, is idiosyncratic perhaps to your firm. And if that can be captured and used to analyze new incoming data of a similar sort, and licensed to your clients under the right conditions, then what you have is a moat. You have a moat that is more than just an AI product, but a product that reflects your brand, your reasoning, and your firm's collective know-how. So we will discuss cartridges, this idea of legal reasoning cartridges in a moment. But when AI gets smarter, it will get smarter in that it will be more synergistic with you and the way you reason, and will reflect the way you specifically reason, so that, again, you and your clients, where appropriate, because you should be able to control all of this, that is the scope and the design of these technologies, or inform them. You will have options that you haven't yet had at scale, that will allow you to deliver highly personalized service, to do so rapidly, to do so cheaply to your clients, and generate net new revenue streams, either by augmenting direct services revenue, or by, with a new business model, by generating software revenue. More on that later. So, forgive me, I just need some water. Pardon me. All right. Our digital transformation model, 5 stages. So stage 1, we're not transformed until we reach stage 5. And every step of the way is an important, valuable step in and of itself. Some organizations will never get to stage 5, and based upon perhaps their business models, perhaps their client or customer mix, that might be fine. So this isn't a must do, and it never would be anyhow. But this is simply a roadmap, and at stage 1, the focus is on digitization. In other words, automating existing processes, largely. And at stage 2, you're an organization that has isolated or practice area or business function specific transformation. So you've succeeded in transforming a practice or transforming an aspect of the law department, perhaps a whole law department. So you might start to see a practice use disruptive technologies to create new business models. A partner might have heard about the success of AI-based profitability insights, and he or she might transform the way that practice staffs matters with attorneys. At stage 3, stage 3 involves multiple coordinated programs for strategic transformation across the firm and across the law department. So in service to the business, forgive me, it just so happens that at this moment they decided to mow my lawn. So someone's asking them to move on. So in other words, at stage 3, the firm, if we're talking about firms, has started rowing in the same direction. At stage 4, things get interesting. And I'll keep this in the context of law firms. So the firm here has complete digital platforms, which it's purchased or built. It has digital products or offerings, and it has defined methodologies and practices internally for digital transformation. So cultural processes, methods like design thinking, the use of agile, etc. And however, it's still not transformative because it's still one technology or one business model change away from being disrupted. The transformation is about continuous, constant digital reinvention. That's stage 5, a living culture of digital reinvention as the backbone of your law firm's business model. Now, again, that might not be what you want, but that's what it looks like, what some law firms will certainly do and are certainly beginning to do. And here in this scenario, you're not just a market leader, but you're a disciplined innovator. So stage 5 is the difference between doing digital and becoming digital. And let's see. All right. So each of these stages has a risk factor and therefore a checklist of goals, indicating why AI-based digital transformation fails and what to focus on so that it can succeed. So let's talk about these quickly, and let's talk about stage 1. So again, this is where firms are actively automating internal processes. So the main cause of failure here is that firms can lose sight of the intended business value of what they want to do. They focus too much on the technology and not enough on how it can advance their existing business goals and their existing business objectives. And you know what those are. They are what they are. Is it competitive pressure? Is it you need better margins? Whatever your existing business goals are, and the risk factors to address here are leadership commitment and agile execution. So senior leaders, the senior most leader within a law firm, for example, they need to lead the digital charge at the firm. And this has been established again and again and again in other industries. Some individuals even state that the singular reason for why digital transformation fails is lack of executive oversight and involvement. What this really means is leadership's skin needs to be in the game, such that they're not just involved, but they're committed. They need to create the right conditions for digital success. They need to be hands-on in defining and translating what the goals are, and constantly breaking barriers so that the team doing the execution, let's say that you have an internal innovation lab, can fulfill their mandate. In terms of agile execution, transforming an entire law firm take more than one project. Obviously, it takes a portfolio of projects, and the strategy for de-risking transformation is really as simple as creating a portfolio of projects that include some big bets and moonshots, and other sure bets, so that the total portfolio is sufficient to deliver the overall targeted goal. So you want to think about agile execution kind of like this. You want to think first, identify your big, broad business opportunity. Is it delivering cost savings? Big, broad, big animal picture. Then identify the transformative ideas. In other words, the hows. You're not thinking about technology yet either. The hows. How will you fulfill that big, broad idea in terms of what to focus on? And then next, define a portfolio of projects focused on realizing that big opportunity with those ideas. And if you do this, the process allows many small bet projects to fail, as they should, in the pursuit of a few big home runs. And if you do this in a disciplined, consistent way, it's incredibly cost effective. You would use iterative design processes like design thinking to flesh out each idea, and an iterative execution methodology like lean startup or agile, forcing you to break the idea into customer or client or you-centric building blocks, and then field test them with minimum viable products, and then roll out only the successful pilots. At stage 2, again, this is where firms have developed digitally based internal processes and perhaps products, but only in parts of the firm. And here the focus, well, the main cause of failure here is underpowering digital teams. Again, let's say you have an innovation lab. Underpowering digital teams and making incorrect choices about what processes and offerings to transform. There are many brilliant ideas for use cases based on AI, ML, NLP, machine learning, artificial intelligence, natural language processing. Brilliant, truly brilliant. But are they viable? They might not be. It might be that the data isn't available. It might be that the idea costs $10 million. There are many factors. It goes back to scope, which I mentioned very briefly earlier, that understanding the right problem to solve is really about what is a viable solution. So the risk factors to address here are empowering digital teams. So the team doing the digitization or transformation at the firm needs air cover to take risks and fail forward. And senior leaders need to be very specific about providing, that air cover and shielding those teams from any noise, any ruffled feathers, by being empathetic, really, though, to everyone, by helping to communicate how the change will help the people being impacted by it, so that they're not threatened. And then, and then the identification of digital pivot points, quite simply your most strategic business opportunities, those with the most transformational impact on the fourth industrial revolution. So this is where the majority of digital transformation bets should be placed. And while yours will be unique unto you, it will almost certainly involve one of 3 general themes, which is it will enable new business models, and it will create new types of digital products or service offerings, or it will transform internal operational processes for a competitive advantage or cost takeout or better margins. At stage 3, you've partially completed a firm-wide strategy for digital transformation. Not everyone shares the same grand vision yet, but you're getting substantial business results. The main cause of failure here is poor change management and too small a small pipeline of transformation projects. You always want to have a pipeline of transformation projects that are prioritized according to, again, a clearly defined method for what good looks like. Your use case backlog, in other words, of vetted viable use cases that you could explore in a certain order. So the risk factors to address here are change management, and the sufficiency of your digital project portfolio. Change management is a complex topic, and probably too complex to address here. Although I will say, at its essence, in the context of this conversation, and in a tiny way, think about creating plans to motivate those who are affected by change and communicating to those who are affected by change, and putting yourself in their shoes, and then you won't have a partial Kodak moment, the bad kind. And then in terms of sufficient project portfolio, think about the example of, your own mix in your personal financial investment portfolio, and how having a good mix helps you optimize risk. And this is a parallel here when it comes to digital transformation. How many ideas and projects are being funneled into the transformation pipeline? And a systemic generation of enough transformation projects beyond just generating interesting ideas, it's really foundational to getting enough fuel and inertia for digital transformation. And at stage 4, well, this is where you have a firm-wide platform or a new business model, and it's fully taken root. It's still, again, a one-time transformation, one technology away, one business model away from being disrupted. And the main cause of failure here is the inability to complete that one-time transformation and get over the hurdle so that it becomes continuous. And the way to address that is one of the initial ways to address that is to think about upskilling IT from a digital perspective. Traditionally, the IT function has provided absolutely necessary operational support, but going forward, IT will almost certainly need to do more. They'll certainly need to be upskilled so that they can help you, for example, automate based on a business understanding of productivity and growth, a business of law and practice of law understanding. And IT leaders of the future, they'll need as many business skills as technology skills so that they can help you transform and apply AI in context. You'll also need to stay current. And again, just like change management, how you go about doing that is a topic unto itself. Although I will say, it's a wise idea to, I would submit with respect, it's a wise idea to develop relationships with venture capital firms or individual VCs. Their thoughts on where they're placing bets and their actions are a good measure of the currency of legal technology and its application. These are oftentimes individuals, by the way, almost always, who invest in other industry technology opportunities having to do with AI, and they see parallels. They might be able to help you avoid expensive pitfalls that have been learned in other industries and identify best practices that you, at your discretion, can choose to apply or not, but they can be profoundly valuable resource for you. And finally, stage 5 is continuous transformation. And the main cause of failure here is you lose the edge that you gained in stage 4 due to lack of agility and perhaps lack of the discipline needed to constantly sense and respond to new business disruption risks. And the risk factors to address here are, you need to have an agile culture. So 3 things really: client-focused innovation, an adaptive environment that encourages that fail-forward culture of disciplined experimentation I mentioned, and a shared common purpose to the transformation that's communicated and developed across the firm that people feel they contribute to. And then in terms of anticipating risk, this is interesting. So there are several signals of industry risk, by which I mean the risk that you might be disrupted, that are good indicators of whether or not that's the case. So I would ask yourself the following questions, thinking about your firm, your function within a law department, and the legal space in general. Is your industry experiencing the digitalization of core processes? What is the volume of digitally native startups? It's increasing. What about the number of successful disruptive startups? We see more investment dollars, not less, over time, and we see more maturity over time. What about the overall industry growth and profitability of legal? What about adjacent industry disruption? Professional services, tax accounting that are not legal, for example. And what is venture capital doing? Those factors are excellent factors to use as a barometer to identify potentials or the potential of disruption. Some of them are quite obvious, frankly, obviously, but still, when taken together, they can produce some interesting insights. So back to stage 5 and the future of AI. What could be possible? Earlier, I mentioned an idea of cartridges, which are really machine learning models, really, that reflect the reasoning of your firm. If you're a firm, why be disintermediated? You are in the best position to benefit from augmenting high-volume legal work, because unlike many technology companies, you have the clients, you have the brand, you have the data, and you have the expertise to contextualize that data. And where you don't have data, you have know-how, and you can dictate what right is, what good looks like, and refine your models accordingly. It's not all statistical analytics; it's also a point of view. In other words, and your point of view, together with what the data says, can be fused together to create something that is more indicative of the way you reason. Now, the use cases could be as many as you could possibly imagine. We could sit all day, but the fact that it's your firm branded reasoning, is intimate and different, and produces a level of trustworthiness that the industry has never seen before. So versus vendors, you have many of the requirements for a law firm and many of the advantages. What's been difficult is do you want to become a technology company? And in fairness, many law firms don't, and that's perfectly reasonable. It's not their mandate. And however, technology is becoming, again, much more cost effective, much more configurable, like Legos. And we've heard about no code as well. It's becoming much more configurable, much cheaper. And going forward, it will be as much of an art as a science. It already is, to create excellent technology offerings by wrapping these building blocks around your specific version of a business problem or a business goal. And being able to embrace agile principles will help you experiment ideas very rapidly. And if they're viable after the minimum viable product phase, really, that's all you need to focus on. If they're viable from there, you can get someone else to build them for you. But you will be informed as to the usefulness. No matter how good the technology is, will someone actually want to use it? From a user experience perspective, the utility of the business utility of the tool. You'll probably also, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to have a sophisticated benefits case as well. These are things that can be developed very quickly internally. And if you wish, you can outsource the development of what comes after the MVP. But it will be much more reflective of your needs and your context. And what would you target? Just at a high level from a use case perspective, again, it could be anything. But if you're a law firm, think about the categories of legal work where the greatest number of law departments spend the greatest amount of money on outside counsel by volume by year, and follow the money. And many of those highly automatable or partially automatable workflows, I'll just say workflows, are opportunities for moat building, for law firm moat building, and for future growth. What I'm really talking about here is a concept I sometimes call legal reasoning as a service. Not we have AI, we sell AI, which again is laudable, it's fine, it's excellent. But the next stage, I remember I said each of those 5 stages has value in and of itself. The next stage after stage 4 enables you to do something like this. Legal reasoning as a service, and again, it allows you to build a digital moat that's uniquely your own. And you would use many of the elements that we discussed earlier in terms of the roadmap to turn your know-how into offerings, services wrapped offerings that are optimized for revenue creation as you see fit. And we're not going back to the beginning, so don't worry. What about a longer term time horizon, say 10 years? 10 years is a long time when you consider that each new generation of technology stands on the shoulders of the generation that came before it. We sequenced the first human genome in 2004 at the cost of hundreds of millions of dollars at the time. And now machines can sequence 18,000 genomes annually for about $500 a genome. So let's try for a moment not to think about AI as software that augments existing tasks, which is largely what it is right now. But let's try to imagine what it could be in 10 years. Let's try to imagine it as an engine of invention and creativity and discovery. What do I mean? When human beings first achieved civilization, we organized ourselves into specialties. You had your builders, your farmers, your artisans, and we still do that. IP lawyers, history teachers, technology journalists. And aside from a handful of very brilliant geniuses, humans we're not really capable of achieving expertise in multiple specialties at the same time. Not really. I mean, I've never met a paleontologist who's a nuclear physicist, who's a cosmologist, who is a woodworking master craftsperson. To be ridiculous, but we all live in intellectual silos. It's the way our biology is, and we can't help it. But suppose an AI system could achieve meaningful expertise in multiple specialties simultaneously. I mean, really emotional intelligence, even not just crunching data from some of the specialties I mentioned, but understanding it on a deep level and reasoning like a physicist, like a paleontologist, etc. Truly reasoning. Now, truly holistic understanding is what I'm talking about. And with it, the ability to identify patterns and possibilities that no single expert ever could. Upon being asked the question, for example, how can I improve the lives of all my country's citizens? What might the recommendation be of an economist who's simultaneously an expert in education, who's simultaneously an expert in climate science, who's simultaneously an ethicist, who's simultaneously an expert in employment and labor markets? Ultimately, the benefits of AI increased as the cost of it falls, and it will impact personal and professional lives in ways that we can begin to anticipate, we can begin to see around the corner a bit, but also in ways that we can't imagine, just as the other industrial revolutions did. With that, I thank you for your time and for the opportunity to join you here this morning.
Thank you, Brian, for quite a masterclass on everything that has to do with digital transformation, the acceleration of AI, and how law firms and everybody in the legal ecosystem can react and should react to be able to remain relevant. Let me ask you a couple of questions
Sure.
that we have been receiving. In your experience, what type of real life examples of transformation or AI transformation cases can you share with the audience?
A real life example, think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. A profoundly timely and relevant topic. It's difficult for many law departments have funding and they have a mandate from the board to improve the DE&I hiring outcomes or help foster improvement amongst their law firms. But oftentimes they struggle to develop a defined DE&I strategy. So if they want to think about applying technology, that technology has to reflect, it's a great example of AI and digital actually, it has to reflect their specific DE&I strategy. What will they do if a law firm doesn't comply? Will they put it on probation? Will they give it a warning? Will they fire the firm? What will they do if firms succeed? And more importantly, with machine learning, this is so important. Any solution that involves analytics, that involves displaying data and looking at trends over time, unless you use machine learning, then every single time you log into that solution, it's like, I'm going to say this in the American holiday, Groundhog's Day. It's the same every single time. It's like Bill Murray in that movie. Unless you have a tool that can remember the action that you took based upon the insight. What did you do when you learned this information about a firm's journey towards hiring more diverse candidates, and what is reasonable and how long it takes, and your strategy, and what is the gap between the two? And a strategy should not be a gauntlet for anything. I mean, a strategy should really be an effective way of achieving a goal. Goal can be a gauntlet. And so a real world example is using AI to read different sorts of data, survey data, for example, billing data, for example, sometimes simultaneously. Billing data must be partial because it only includes names, and that's only male-female information, which you have to guess at, which might not be equitable. So the more data, the better. But you want to parse that data in a way that feeds into a tool that allows you to make a decision, and then to identify over time what good looks like. And this could be true for any use case. What are the actions, again, that you're taking or that you're recommending others to take based upon the insights? And it gives you a chance for course correction. It gives you a chance for collaboration. That between law firms and law departments that didn't exist before, where the best of intentions exist right now, but this very important challenge, and I say that from I'm strictly speaking from a technology perspective, is occurring at a time when there's a Cambrian explosion of technology solutions, and again, Legos and building blocks. How do you tackle something so sensitive? With what off-the-shelf technology, with what do you design and build something? And it all starts not with technology. It all starts with understanding your goals, your strategy, defining them, and then instantiating that in the technology. So that's an example of a real-world solution that that is timely and that massively reduces the time to insight and the burden on law firms of responding to different DE&I strategies and goals from different clients all over the place, making it easier for everybody to achieve the outcome that everybody wants.
And let me close with this question, which is very relevant, and I'm sure you get it all the time. What are the most important factors slowing down digital transformation in the legal sector, and how can we tackle that?
Fear is the most important factor slowing down digital transformation. And oftentimes, and again with respect on the law firm side, and it's fear based upon in the perception of revenue cannibalization and unfamiliarity with and perhaps a disinclination, which again could be reasonable, to get into the software business. Meanwhile, the AI is becoming capable of more and more, and that trend is not slowing down. We can expect that it will continue as it has in other industries, and that lessons learned in other industries, once there's equalization between what AI can do in legal and other industries in general, then lessons learned over here will be easier and faster to port into legal from other industries. So, I think that there's fear around business model disruption. And there's also trepidation around trustworthiness. Who trained my model? Was it actually a subject matter expert? Was it a group of data scientists who might be excellent, they might be brilliant, and they might have trained the model or models properly. But in other cases, perhaps you have individuals training models who are pure technologists who are missing business of law and practice of law context. Can you trust it? The second thing slowing it down. And the third, which I would actually list as number one, which I would also list as the most significant challenge in AI across industries, bar none, absolutely, is getting knowledge out of the heads of experts and into these tools at scale. Making it easy to train AI models in a way that doesn't take away from your core function as a lawyer. Or whatever it is, in any other, again, I said this is ubiquitous. Being able to train quickly machine learning models that capture the right expertise and to do so at scale, that is fundamentally a limiting factor of AI, and it's slowing it down everywhere, and particularly in our very expertise-driven profession.
Excellent. Well, Brian, we've reached the top of the hour with that thought, and obviously the challenges and huge opportunities ahead. And thank you for your presentation. As always, it's a pleasure to have you here with us at this event. And I'm sure that everybody not only enjoyed, but learned a lot from your insights. And well, thanks again. We'll definitely be in touch.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for your time, everyone. And thank you.
Thank you. Alex. We'll transition in a second.
Thank you, Brian. And yes, I will stop broadcasting in now, and we'll be back with you in literally 3 minutes. We already have our next speaker on the backstage. We're going to prepare the presentations, and we'll be back with you in literally 3 minutes, so don't go too far away, okay? We'll be back right in 3 minutes.